The hedge fund partner had 96 hours to liquidate the clinic, until he discovered it once saved his family. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The boardroom was cold. Not temperature, atmosphere. 14 executives sat in leather chairs, morning coffee steaming from ceramic mugs, waiting. Tobias Harlan stood at the head of the mahogany table, charcoal suit pressed sharp, silver cufflinks catching overhead light. He opened the Riverside file without ceremony. Riverside Veterinary Clinic. Acquisition finalized Monday, demolition scheduled Friday morning. 96 hours. His voice was flat, practiced, carrying no inflection. This was routine. Distressed asset, prime location, developer ready with capital. The board chair nodded. Caroline, his ex-wife, still a voting member, kept her eyes on her tablet. The CFO asked about environmental clearances. Tobias confirmed permits filed, signatures obtained, inspections completed. The vote took 4 minutes. Unanimous approval. His assistant knocked once, site visit scheduled for 2 o'clock, paperwork needed signatures before Friday. Tobias closed the file. Next agenda item. He arrived at the clinic at 1:47 p.m., checking his watch as he pulled into the gravel lot. Small stones crunched under the sedan's tires. Single-story, cement block construction painted pale yellow, flat roof showing wear. Clients waited on white plastic chairs outside, dogs on nylon leashes, cats in wire carriers. He grabbed his briefcase, straightened his tie. The front door burst open before he reached it. A woman ran past carrying a shepherd mix, the dog limp and bleeding in her arms. Blood soaked her blue scrubs from shoulder to waist. She moved fast, focused entirely forward, didn't acknowledge his presence. Dark hair pulled back in a bun, loose strands stuck to her neck with sweat. She met his eyes for half a second. Green, sharp, no time for pleasantries. "Your paperwork can wait." The doors swung shut with a pneumatic hiss. An alarm sounded inside, high-pitched, urgent. Someone shouted medical terms he didn't recognize through thin walls. Tobias stood in the parking lot, briefcase in hand, expensive shoes dusty from gravel, the scent of antiseptic and blood fading on the afternoon breeze. Through the window he could see an old golden retriever sleeping under the reception desk, completely undisturbed by the chaos unfolding 10 feet away. 3 hours passed. Tobias stood near his car, briefcase at his feet on the gravel, watching the clinic entrance like he was waiting for a verdict. Clients came and went in steady rotation. A woman in restaurant uniform carried a beagle puppy inside. An elderly man led a limping terrier through the doors, moving slowly, patient with the dog's pace. Tobias loosened his tie, felt the silk slide against his collar. The receptionist came outside at 4 o'clock. She offered him coffee, a plastic chair inside, a clipboard to sign while he waited. He declined all 3. Kept standing. His control was slipping and he knew it. This wasn't protocol. He should have left after 30 minutes, rescheduled through proper channels. Instead, he shifted his weight from heel to heel and stayed. Through the window, he watched her work. Dr. Petra Voss. The nameplate on her office door had said so. She moved between exam rooms with quiet efficiency, hands steady even when moving fast, team anticipating her needs without instruction. No wasted motion. A vet tech passed instruments before she asked. A receptionist updated charts in real time. The rhythm was precise, practiced. He'd seen boardrooms with less discipline. The surgery ended just before 5. Petra emerged through the double doors, scrubs changed to fresh ones, hair still damp from washing. She saw him still in the parking lot. Her expression didn't change, no surprise, no annoyance. She nodded once, small acknowledgement. The shepherd mix had survived. She went back inside without another word. Petra led him to her office without speaking, footsteps echoing on worn linoleum. The room was small, walls lined with dented metal file cabinets, desk buried under paperwork and dog-eared medical journals. She gestured to the metal folding chair across from her, paint chipped at the edges. He sat. She remained standing, direct eye contact. "You're here about the sale. I have documents that need your signature." Tobias opened his briefcase, pulled out the folder. Standard severance package, relocation assistance, professional references, generous by industry standards. She didn't reach for it, didn't even glance at the papers. "The clinic operates on a sliding scale model," she said. Statement of fact. She explained it calmly. Half the clients paid cash, whatever they could afford, from $5 to full price. The other half paid through labor, cleaning kennels after hours, repairing equipment when it broke. One family traded vegetables from their community garden. A retired carpenter built the new kennel doors last month. No formal contracts, just agreements made in conversation. Trust built over time. She watched him calculate the numbers mentally. "It's not a sustainable business model," she said quietly. "It's veterinary medicine." Tobias moved to the intake area, positioned himself in the corner near a faded poster about heartworm prevention. Observed. Organized chaos in real time. Clients filled plastic chairs bolted to the floor, dogs panting, cats yowling in carriers. Bilingual staff switched between English and Spanish mid-sentence, moving seamlessly. The waiting room smelled like wet fur and industrial disinfectant. Everything was worn but meticulously clean. An elderly woman approached the counter carrying a Tupperware container wrapped in a kitchen towel, still radiating warmth. She spoke quietly to the receptionist in Spanish. The receptionist smiled, accepted the container. Tamales, corn husks visible through the clear lid, and updated her account. Paid in full. A teenager mopped the hallway, headphones in, moving efficiently around clients' feet. His intake form, clipped to the wall, said, "Payment arrangement, kennel cleaning, 2 hours weekly." Petra treated each one identically. No judgment in her voice or posture. The woman who paid in tamales got the same thorough exam, the same careful explanation. Tobias had spent 20 years optimizing profit margins, maximizing returns, creating wealth from thin air through leverage and timing. He'd never seen wealth like this. Real wealth. The kind that couldn't be leveraged or traded. Tobias turned from the intake desk and nearly collided with a boy carrying a bucket of cleaning supplies that sloshed when he moved. Leo, his nephew. 9 years old, gap-toothed smile fading to surprise, wearing an oversized volunteer shirt with the clinic logo. The boy froze, bucket sloshing water onto the floor. "Uncle Tobias? What are you doing here?" Tobias kept his voice neutral, professional. Leo set down the bucket carefully, both hands gripping the handle, straightened his shoulders. "I volunteer. Saturdays. Mom drops me off before her shift." He said it like it was obvious, like Tobias should have known this. "I help with the kennels, feed the animals. I also feed Copper every morning. He's the clinic dog, the old golden retriever." Petra appeared behind Leo, hand resting briefly on the boy's shoulder. Light touch, there and gone. "He's one of our best volunteers." Leo beamed, stood taller. Tobias felt something shift in his chest. "How long have you been coming here?" Leo shrugged. "Since last year. Grandpa's dog got really sick once, remember? This place helped when we didn't have money. They fixed him anyway." Tobias didn't remember, didn't want to examine why. He deflected. "You should get back to work." Leo grabbed the bucket, headed toward the kennels. Petra watched Tobias's face, reading something there. Said nothing. Didn't need to. The clinic emptied after 7. The last client left slowly, thanking everyone by name. Staff left in pairs afterward. Tobias stayed in the waiting room, briefcase unopened beside his chair, watching the parking lot lights flicker on as darkness settled. He didn't know why he hadn't left, couldn't articulate the reason. Petra found him there an hour later, sitting alone under fluorescent lights. She'd changed into jeans and a faded sweater. She stopped when she saw him. "You're still here." She didn't send him away. Led him down the hallway instead, stopped near the back exit where no one could see them through windows. She leaned against the doorframe, exhausted. "Why do you stay?" he asked. The question came out rougher than intended. Her hand moved to the stethoscope at her neck. Old, dented rubber tubing cracked near the earpieces. She turned it once between her fingers, the motion automatic. Grounding. "My father ran a mobile vet clinic. Back roads, farmers who couldn't pay cash, rural families with working dogs they depended on." She looked at the stethoscope, not at him. "I watched him choose service over profit every single day of my childhood. He died doing this work. Heart attack in his truck between calls. He was 53. Silence settled between them like dust. Heavy. Tobias had no response. Nothing in his vocabulary fit this. No corporate language, no negotiation framework. She picked up her files, adjusted the bag on her shoulder. "I'm not here because it makes financial sense. I'm here because he showed me what actually matters." She walked toward the exit, left him standing in the empty hallway. He didn't follow, just stood there listening to her footsteps fade. Tobias sat in his car for 20 minutes before starting the engine, hand on the key but not turning it. The dashboard clock glowed blue. 9:17 p.m. when his phone finally rang. Caroline. He answered on the second ring, put it on speaker. Her voice cut through before he could speak. "The press is asking about Riverside." He pulled onto the main road, merged into sparse evening traffic. "What press?" She exhaled sharply, frustrated. "The journalist contacted me this afternoon. Business desk reporter. Asked about our past liquidations, community impact, pattern of displacing low-income facilities. They're building a narrative." "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. Referred them to our PR team like protocol requires." The light stayed red. "But they'll keep digging. You know how this works." Her voice was cold now, professional distance. "Handle this quietly, Tobias. The board is watching. We can't afford another controversy." She hung up before he could respond. No goodbye. The light turned green. He sat there until someone honked behind him, then drove. Leo visited Tobias's office Wednesday afternoon, unannounced. The assistant let him through without checking protocol, family privilege. Tobias looked up from his computer mid-email to the developer, surprised. Leo stood in the doorway, school backpack strapped to both shoulders. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." Tobias minimized the email, gave Leo his full attention, closed the laptop halfway. The boy came closer, stopped at the edge of the desk, small hands gripping the backpack straps. "Are you really selling the clinic?" Direct, no preamble. Tobias had rehearsed this explanation, practiced it in the mirror that morning. Business decision, property value appreciation, redevelopment benefits the entire community long-term, tax revenue generation, job creation. Progress requires difficult choices. Leo listened without interrupting, eyes steady on Tobias's face. When Tobias finished, the boy tilted his head slightly, considering. "Why would you close the place that fixed Grandpa's dog when we had nothing?" Tobias froze. The question landed like a physical blow. Simple. Devastating. The boy's eyes were clear, honest, waiting for an answer that made sense. Tobias opened his mouth, closed it. Found no words that didn't sound hollow. Leo waited, patient. willing to stand there until he got an answer. Tobias had nothing. The silence stretched. Tobias returned to the clinic Friday at 11 p.m., the city quiet except for distant sirens. Told himself it was due diligence, final review before the vote, professional thoroughness. He used the access code the receptionist had given him, 6 digits he'd memorized immediately, let himself in through the back door. The clinic was dark, silent except for animals shifting in their kennels. He found the file room, turned on a single desk lamp that cast yellow light across stacks of folders. 15 minutes of searching through alphabetically organized files. Then he found it. Harlan family, golden retriever, emergency parvovirus treatment, hospitalization 4 days, IV fluids every 6 hours, medications, round-the-clock monitoring. He scanned down the page, fingers shaking slightly. Payment status. Deferred pending family stabilization. Then, 3 months later, a note in different handwriting. Payment forgiven. Family bankruptcy filed. Cannot pursue collection ethically. The date stamp made his chest tight, made breathing difficult. 15 years ago, during his father's collapse, the worst year of their lives. He sat in the dark office, file open on the desk under the pool of lamplight. They'd had a golden retriever. Max. He'd forgotten, or blocked it out deliberately. Everything from that year was gray, fractured, painful to access. But the dog had gotten sick, really sick, dying, and someone, Dr. Voss's father probably, based on the timeline, had saved Max when they couldn't pay, when they had nothing, when his father was drowning in bankruptcy proceedings. Tobias turned off the lamp, sat in the darkness. Didn't move for a long time, just sat with that knowledge, that debt, that grace he'd never acknowledged. 72 hours until the board vote. Tobias arrived at the clinic Monday morning, 7:15 a.m., determined to solve this like he solved everything, with analysis, planning, alternative proposals. He carried a leather portfolio filled with revised projections, scenario analyses, risk assessments. Petra was already in surgery. The receptionist looked up, recognized him now, smiled tiredly. Emergency overnight. Pit bull hit by a car. She's been here since 5. He waited. But this time he didn't stand in the parking lot. He sat in the break room, reviewed files, client records, payment logs going back 7 years, donation receipts with handwritten thank you notes. The pattern emerged clearly. Debts forgiven systematically, payments deferred indefinitely, services rendered for free. The clinic lost money on paper every quarter, built wealth in every other way that mattered. Petra found him in the break room 2 hours later. You're here early? I have a proposal. He stood, slid documents toward her. Generous severance package for all staff, relocation fund, professional placement assistance, market rate buyout for equipment, endowment for local animal shelter in her name. Everything he could think of to make this easier. She read through it methodically, didn't interrupt. When she reached the last page, she set it down, placed both hands flat on the table, green eyes steady. What happens to the clients who pay in vegetables? He had an answer prepared. Referrals to other low-cost clinics, transportation assistance for 3 months. She listened, then asked again, quieter. What happens to their dignity? He had no answer for that. She stood, left the documents on the table. I'm not for sale. Neither is their dignity. Returned to work. Tuesday morning he tried again. Fund other veterinary clinics across the city. Strategic donations. Create scholarship program for veterinary students focused on underserved communities. Pour money where it would help more people, more animals. He believed in this pitch. It was sound. Petra stopped mid-exam. The cat on the table flicked its tail nervously. She kept one hand steady on the cat's shoulder, looked at Tobias directly. Her voice was calm, final. "You're trying to buy permission to feel okay about this." The words landed clean, sharp, true. She raised her free hand slightly, stopping him mid-breath. "I don't give permission. Make your choice." She returned to the cat. The conversation was over. The developer called Wednesday afternoon while Tobias was at the clinic. He stepped outside to take it. "We have a problem, Harlan." The voice was sharp, aggressive. "Condo pre-sales depend on demolition timelines staying firm. We have contracts. Delays cost millions, daily. Get this done or we pursue damages." Tobias ended the call without confirming, stood in the parking lot, realizing the truth. He was in the middle now, not in control anymore, caught between obligations that couldn't coexist. Evening settled cool and dark. The clinic had a roof access, flat tar surface, low wall along the edge, view of the city skyline. Tobias found Petra there Tuesday night after closing. She sat on the wall, legs dangling over the edge, looking at the lights spreading below. She heard him approach. Didn't send him away. Didn't acknowledge him either. He stood beside her, left space between them, 3 feet, maybe 4. Didn't fill the silence. Traffic sounds drifted up from the street below. He gripped the wall edge, concrete rough under his palms, looked at the skyline instead of her. Finally spoke, voice quiet. "My father's bankruptcy taught me to cut losses fast, never hold a losing position, never let sentiment cloud judgment, never trust emotion over analysis." His voice was factual, reciting lessons carved into him through pain. Petra didn't respond immediately, let the silence stretch. He continued, needing to finish. "I watched him lose everything because he believed in people. Trusted partners who betrayed him, extended credit that never got repaid, made decisions with his heart instead of his head. It destroyed him financially, emotionally. We lost the house, lost everything that mattered." He exhaled, shoulders dropping. "I swore I'd never make those mistakes. Never be that vulnerable." She turned to look at him then. Her expression was soft, sad, understanding without pity. "And you learned the wrong lesson. Not cruel, just truth, spoken gently." She stood, brushed off her jeans, headed toward the roof door, left him standing at the edge, the weight of her words settling in his chest like stones. Wednesday morning. Tobias arrived at the clinic carrying 2 cups from the cafe near his office, expensive, ethically sourced beans. He'd learned her order from the receptionist, needed to offer something. She was in the break room when he found her, pouring instant coffee from a jar into a chipped mug that said, "World's Best Vet" in faded letters. Copper lay in the corner on a worn blanket, breathing audibly in sleep. She saw the cups in his hands, raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" He set one in front of her. "Coffee. 2 sugars, no cream, right?" She looked at the expensive cup, then at her instant coffee. Small smile. "Close." She pushed the fancy coffee aside gently. "Want to try the real budget version?" She poured him a cup. Same instant coffee, same chipped mug. He tried it. Terrible. Bitter, metallic, barely qualified as coffee. She watched his face, smile widening slightly. "Welcome to the real budget." He drank it anyway, sat across from her. They sat in silence for 10 minutes, drinking terrible coffee, not speaking, not needing to. Copper shifted in the corner, tags clinking softly. It felt like progress. Small. Real. Thursday afternoon, Tobias sat in the corner of the waiting room, watching Petra work intake. An immigrant family came through the door. Mother, father, teenage daughter, small boy, sick cat in a cardboard box. The parents spoke limited English, worried eyes, hands gripping each other. The daughter translated, voice shaking, trying to sound confident. Petra knelt to their level, eye contact equal, spoke slowly in basic Spanish. Examined the cat gently, dehydrated, lethargic, likely kidney issue. She explained treatment through the daughter translating, hands moving to demonstrate IV fluids, medication schedule, made it visual. The mother asked about cost, voice tight with fear. Her husband squeezed her hand. Petra met the mother's eyes directly. "We'll figure it out. Let's take care of him first." No discussion of payment, no negotiation, just certainty. The family's shoulders dropped visibly. Relief. Trust. Petra lifted the cat carefully, headed toward the exam room. Tobias watched her hands, steady, competent, sure. Watched how the family relaxed in her presence. He'd never seen wealth like this, the kind that couldn't be quantified on a balance sheet. Caroline called Thursday evening. Tobias was in his car, halfway home from the clinic. He answered on Bluetooth. "The board wants an official statement on Riverside." Her voice was clipped, professional, distant. "Hedge fund investors are asking questions. Direct questions." "Questions about what?" "About whether you're compromised. About whether personal sentiment is affecting your judgment. About whether this is becoming a problem that affects other deals." She paused. "This is becoming a problem, Tobias. Contain it. Now." He exited the highway, took the longer route home, buying time. What if I don't want to contain it? Silence on the other end, complete. Then breathing, then her voice, colder. "Then you're not who I thought you were." She hung up. Tobias drove the rest of the way home without music, her words replaying in his head. Not who I thought you were. Maybe that was the point. Leo volunteered at the clinic Friday afternoon. Tobias had started coming regularly enough that the boy expected to see him there. Leo found him in the kennel area, refilling water bowls with a hose. The boy carried a bag of dog food almost as big as he was, set it down carefully. Copper stood slowly from his spot near the door, moved to Leo with stiff movements. The boy stroked the dog's graying head absently. "You're here a lot now," Leo said. Observation. Tobias kept his eyes on the water bowl. Business requires thorough assessment. Corporate speak, muscle memory. Leo wasn't buying it. "Dr. Voss says you're the one deciding if we stay open." Direct. No filter. "That's part of my responsibility, yes." "Why haven't you decided yet?" Leo's voice was curious, not accusing. Tobias set down the water bowl, turned to face his nephew. "It's complicated." Leo shrugged. "Seems simple to me. Either you close the place that helps people or you don't." 9 years old. Perfect moral clarity. Tobias envied him that certainty. 48 hours until the vote. Saturday morning. Tobias sat at his home office desk, laptop open, inbox filling with urgent messages. A journalist had sent an email at 6:23 a.m. Riverside Veterinary Clinic is the 5th low-income facility your fund has sold for development in 3 years. Community advocates are calling this a pattern of displacement. Do you have a response? He drafted a reply, deleted it, drafted again. Corporate language about strategic asset optimization, shareholder value maximization. All technically true, all completely missing the point. He deleted the second draft, started typing a third version, stopped. Realized he was trying to justify the unjustifiable. He closed the laptop, sat in silence. The apartment felt empty, cold despite the heating. Now it just felt hollow. like a space designed for someone else. The developer's call came Sunday morning, early. Tobias was at the clinic when his phone rang. The voice was sharp. Final. If the clinic sale doesn't close by Friday, the entire condo deal collapses. Domino effect. We have penalties written into contracts, investors who will sue for damages. The line went dead. No goodbye. The board scheduled an emergency call for Monday. Caroline sent the calendar invite with no message attached, just time, date, single agenda item. Riverside Clinic resolution. Final decision required. He stood in the clinic parking lot, phone in hand, watching clients arrive. Families, elderly couples, teenagers carrying cardboard boxes with sick kittens. The math was simple, brutal. Save the clinic, lose everything else. Save his career, close the clinic. No middle ground. Caroline called back an hour later. Her voice was ice. You're jeopardizing everything we built. 15 years of work. For what? A charity vet clinic that loses money every quarter? She cut him off. The board meets tomorrow, 9 a.m. Finalize the sale or we finalize your removal. Votes already lined up. This is courtesy notice. She hung up. Tobias sat on the curb and realized he'd already made his choice. He just hadn't admitted it yet. An elderly man arrived Monday afternoon carrying a golden retriever that looked ancient. Old dog, graying muzzle, labored breathing. The man's hands shook as he set the carrier down, arthritic fingers struggling with clasps. Tobias helped him into the exam room, stayed when Petra arrived with stethoscope already around her neck. She examined the dog gently, heart failing, kidneys shutting down, pain evident in every breath. In the corner, Copper lay sleeping on his blanket. Petra knelt beside the man on the floor, voice calm and certain. He's ready. His body is telling us. He's in pain. She explained euthanasia procedure without rushing, sedative first, then final injection. Peaceful, no suffering. The man nodded, tears silent on his weathered face. I've had him 14 years. Since my wife passed. He was her dog first. Petra squeezed his hand once. He had a good life. You gave him that. He knew he was loved. Her hand moved to the stethoscope at her neck, brief, grounding, then dropped. She prepared the injection, walked the man through each step. No surprises. Tobias watched her hold space for this grief. No rushing, no platitudes. Just presence. The dog slipped away quietly, the man's hand on its head. Petra stayed with him for 20 minutes after. Didn't bill him, didn't mention payment. Just sat with him. Tobias stood in the doorway watching her work. This was wealth. Real wealth. The kind his spreadsheets couldn't calculate, the kind that mattered when nothing else did. He understood now what his father had known before the bankruptcy. Some things couldn't be quantified. Shouldn't be. Tobias found Petra Saturday evening after her final rounds. She was in her office, filing paperwork, organizing next week's schedule. He knocked on the doorframe. 2 soft raps. She looked up, gestured him in. He stood just inside the door, hands empty. I need to explain my position. She set down her pen, gave him her attention. He explained. Fiduciary duty to investors, board obligations written into contracts, developer agreements with penalty clauses, binding commitments, financial consequences of breach, lawsuits, reputation damage. Everything was true. Everything was real. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she stood. Her hand moved to the stethoscope at her neck, brief, grounding, then dropped. I won't make this easier for you. You have to choose. Her voice was steady, final. He shook his head, frustrated. Choose what? She held his gaze. Who you want to be. She walked past him, left the office, footsteps fading. He stood alone, her words hanging in the air like a question he couldn't answer. Tobias spent Monday night preparing his presentation. First time in his career arguing to keep a losing asset. Community value models, social return on investment calculations, healthcare access as infrastructure. The numbers still didn't work. Not the way boards understood numbers. He built the deck anyway. Client demographics, service patterns mapped over 3 years, community testimonials, photos, the waiting room crowded with families, volunteers cleaning kennels, the elderly man with his dying dog. Tried to make them see what he'd seen. Knew they wouldn't. Boards dealt in abstractions, revenue growth, market position. Not in elderly men crying over dying dogs. He finished at 2 a.m., reviewed it twice. Knew the board would reject this. Knew the vote was already decided. Prepared anyway. Because Leo would ask what he'd done. Because Petra deserved someone to try even when trying was pointless. Because his father would have tried. He saved the file, closed the laptop, sat in the dark apartment knowing tomorrow would cost him everything. Leo called Tuesday morning while Tobias was getting dressed. The boy's voice was quiet, careful. I heard about the board meeting today. From Mom. Caroline must have told him, preparing him for the outcome. Are you going to save the clinic? Direct question. Tobias straightened his tie, looked at himself in the mirror. Same suit, same routine. Different man underneath. I'm going to try. Silence. Then breathing. Then Leo's voice, stronger. I'm proud of you. Even if you lose. Even if it doesn't work. The words landed soft, final, hitting something deep in his chest. Tobias sat on the edge of his bed, phone pressed to his ear, eyes closed. Thank you. Leo. Uncle Tobias? Yeah? Grandpa would be proud too. I know he would. The line went quiet. Leo had hung up. Tobias sat with that for 10 minutes, then stood, grabbed his briefcase, headed to the office for the last time. The boardroom was full, 18 executives around the table, Caroline at the far end, expression neutral, professional mask in place. People he'd worked with for 15 years, built this fund with. They knew what was coming. He could see it in their postures. Arms crossed, professional distance established. Tobias presented his case, kept his voice level, factual, explained the clinic's community value measured in lives saved, social ROI calculated through impact modeling, long-term neighborhood investment potential, showed the photos, read the testimonials out loud, proposed alternative financing structures, spoke for 20 minutes. No one interrupted. The silence was complete. The vote was 7-2 against his proposal. Caroline moved to remove him as managing partner, effective immediately. Fiduciary duty to our investors requires decisive leadership. This situation has compromised that. We have obligations. The motion passed. Same count. Tobias packed his briefcase slowly. I understand. He walked out of the boardroom, left his keycard on the reception desk, took the elevator down for the last time. The press ran the story Wednesday morning, front page of the business section. Hedge fund partner ousted after clinic defense. Harlan removed following controversial stand on low-income veterinary sale. His phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Investors, partners, clients, former clients. By noon, 3 major clients had pulled their funds, millions in assets under management. partnerships dissolved through terse emails, invitations rescinded to industry events. His reputation unraveled in real time. Voicemails piled up, former colleagues offering condolences that felt like eulogies. Contacts cutting ties politely, professionally, permanently. The hedge fund world was small. Word traveled fast. He was toxic now. The penthouse felt enormous that night. Empty rooms echoing footsteps, polished floors reflecting overhead lights. His career was dismantling itself piece by piece. Savings would last 6 months, maybe 8 if he cut expenses. He stood at the window, looking at the city lights spread below, feeling nothing. Not regret, not fear, just quiet. Strange peace. Thursday night, 3rd day post-removal. Tobias sat in the apartment alone. No meetings scheduled, no calls to return, no deals to close. The silence was complete. He'd spent 15 years building this career brick by brick, 3 days watching it dismantle. Savings would last 6 months. Then what? He didn't know. No plan, no backup. The realization came slowly, then all at once. He was free. Terrifying and liberating simultaneously. No board obligations, no investor pressure, no fiduciary duty to profits over people. The cage door was open. He'd unlocked it himself, walked out voluntarily. Stood on the other side now, uncertain and unencumbered and absolutely terrified. He opened his laptop, drafted an email to the developer, fingers shaking slightly. I'm out. Find another property. The clinic stays. His finger hovered over send. Every instinct screamed against this, burning the last bridge, making the failure permanent, irreversible. He pressed send before he could reconsider, closed the laptop, sat in the dark. Free. Completely free. Friday morning, Tobias went to the clinic anyway. Same time as always, 7:30. Brought coffee, cheap instant from the grocery store, made it home, 2 sugars, no cream. He'd learned her order. Made it himself this time in his own kitchen. Petra was in the break room, surprised to see him standing there. Her eyes moved to the cup in his hand, back to his face, reading the situation. She accepted the cup but didn't drink immediately. Set it on the counter, steam rising. Her voice was quiet, careful. You didn't have to do that. Lose everything, throw away your career. She meant the board, the vote, the reputation, the life he'd built over 15 years. Everything gone in 3 days. He set his own cup down beside hers, hands empty. Yes, I did. The words were simple, final, no elaboration. She studied him for a long moment, really looked at him, then nodded once. Thank you. Not forgiveness, not absolution, acknowledgement, recognition. She picked up her cup, took a sip, grimaced slightly. Still terrible. You still make terrible coffee. He almost smiled. I'm learning. Saturday evening. The clinic was closed, lights off except for the office. Petra was finishing paperwork when she heard footsteps, looked up. Tobias in the doorway, worn jeans he'd started wearing to volunteer instead of suits, work boots, t-shirt, hands in pockets. No briefcase, no armor. Different. Fundamentally different. The sale won't go through. I pulled out completely. Burned the bridge. The developer is looking for another property across town. He spoke matter-of-factly, no drama, no heroics. Statement of fact. Petra set down her pen slowly, looked at him directly. The clinic stays? The clinic stays. Silence stretched between them, heavy, weighted with everything unsaid. Then her voice, softer. "What will you do now?" He shook his head slightly, honest. "I don't know yet. Figure it out as I go. Start from zero." Pause. "If you'll let me." She didn't answer immediately, studied his face. Finally, "We open at 7 tomorrow. Kennel cleaning starts at 6:30. Bring boots." He nodded. "I'll be here." She returned to her paperwork. He left. The decision was made. Final. 5 weeks later, Tobias stood on a construction site in work boots and faded jeans, hammering roofing nails into plywood sheets. The sun was high overhead, midday heat. Sweat soaked through his shirt. His hands were calloused in ways they'd never been from signing documents, from holding pens. The penthouse was sold, the portfolio liquidated. He lived in a studio apartment near the clinic now, 800 square feet, rebuilding from zero. Different work, different life, different person. Leo appeared at the fence line during lunch break, calling through chain link. The boy's eyes went wide, took in the hard hat, the tool belt, the physical labor, the dirt under fingernails. "Uncle Tobias?" Like he wasn't sure. Tobias set down his hammer, walked over, boots crunching on gravel. "Hey, kid." Leo studied him through the fence. Really looked. "You look different." Not criticism, observation. "I am different." Tobias meant it, felt it in his bones. The construction foreman called break over. Tobias grabbed his lunch pail, sandwich he'd made himself that morning, apple, water bottle, nothing fancy. Leo grinned, gap-toothed. "Mom says you're living like a normal person now." Tobias almost laughed. First time in weeks. "Your mom would know. She warned me about this." The boy hesitated, then spoke fast. "I'm proud of you." Said it like he'd been holding it in. Tobias squeezed his shoulder once through the fence. "Thanks, Leo. That means everything." Tobias started at the clinic the following Monday. Showed up at 6:30, found Petra already there reviewing surgery schedules, coffee steaming. She handed him a mop and bucket without preamble, no ceremony. "Kennels first, then restocking supply room. Trash goes out at noon, recycling separate." No welcome speech, no special treatment. Just work. He took the bucket. He cleaned kennels for 3 hours straight. Dogs barked at him, unfamiliar with his presence. Water splashed his pants. The smell was sharp and animal. Urine, feces, fear, wet fur. He scrubbed floors until his back ached, muscles burning, organized medications by expiration date, hauled 50-pound bags of kibble from delivery truck to storage shed. Petra passed him twice, didn't comment, didn't supervise, didn't check his work. Let him figure it out. Copper followed him slowly from kennel to supply room, settled in the corner to sleep, breathing audible. Lunch break came. Noon exactly. Tobias sat on the back step eating a sandwich from home. Petra joined him without asking, brought her own lunch in a paper bag. They didn't talk, just sat. Ate. The silence felt earned this time. Not awkward, not weighted with expectation, just two people eating lunch after working all morning. She stood first when her phone alarm went off. "Good work today." Walked back inside. He followed. The afternoon stretched ahead. 3 weeks in, Petra let him observe surgery. Simple spay procedure, routine, low risk. She explained each step while working, incision location, clamp placement, suture technique. Her hands moved with practiced precision, muscle memory refined over years. Tobias watched, asked questions when she paused. "Why that angle with the scalpel?" She showed him, explained muscle structure, made it visual, teaching while working. The following week, she taught him basic triage during morning intake, how to check vitals, pulse, respiration, temperature, where to place fingers, how to ask intake questions that revealed urgency without alarming clients, how to recognize emergencies versus manageable waits, red flags, warning signs. He learned fast. Pattern recognition, risk assessment, skills transferable from finance. Applied differently now. Different stakes, lives instead of money. "You're good at this," she said one afternoon, surprised. They were processing intake forms, prioritizing cases based on urgency. "Pattern recognition," he said. Smiled slightly. First real smile in weeks. "Turns out it applies to more than spreadsheets." She nodded once, handed him the next chart. Trust building incrementally. Day by day. Leo's school invited Tobias to Career Day. Fourth grade class, 28 kids staring at the former hedge fund manager in worn jeans and clinic polo shirt. Not what they expected. The teacher introduced him with obvious confusion. "Mr. Harlan used to work in finance. Now he works at a veterinary clinic." The kids looked confused. One raised her hand. "Did you get fired?" "Yes," Tobias said. Honest, direct. "I made a choice that cost me my job. Lost my career, my reputation, most of my money, my professional network." The room went quiet. Kids leaned forward. "Was it worth it?" a boy asked from the back. Tobias thought about that. Really considered it. "Yes, because I chose who I wanted to be instead of who I was supposed to be, instead of who everyone expected." More questions came, hard ones, smart ones. "Aren't you scared? What if you can't get another job?" He answered each one truthfully. No corporate script, no sanitized version, just the truth. Failure hurt physically. Rebuilding was terrifying every single day. But choosing service over status mattered more than comfort, more than security, more than approval. Leo watched from the back row, smiling, nodding. Tobias realized this was the first time he'd ever been proud of himself. Really proud. Not proud of an achievement. Proud of who he was. Tobias was restocking bandages in the supply room when he heard Leo talking to Petra in the break room across the hall. The door was cracked open. Leo's voice carried through clearly. "He's different now. Really different, not fake different." Petra's voice, quieter. "Different how?" Pause. The boy, thinking. "He listens. Before, he was always thinking about the next thing. Now he's just here. Present." Petra. "People can change when they want to." Leo, certain, no hesitation. "If they want to." He wanted to. He chose to. Footsteps. Approaching. Tobias stepped back from the doorway, kept working. But the words settled in his chest. Warm. Solid. Real. Evidence of something shifting. Pre-surgery prep. Petra scrubbed in at the steel sink while Tobias laid out instruments on the tray. Scalpel, clamps, sutures, gauze. She pulled the stethoscope from around her neck, the one she always wore. Her father's. Dented from years of use, rubber tubing cracked near the earpieces. She held it out across the space. "Hold this while I scrub in." He took it carefully, felt the weight, metal cool against his palm despite being worn against her skin all morning. The wear from decades of use visible in scratches and dents. This wasn't just medical equipment. This was legacy, trust, connection. He understood the gesture, stood holding it like it was fragile, precious, sacred. She scrubbed methodically, glanced back through the window, saw him through the glass, standing there, stethoscope cradled in both hands, treating it with reverence. Something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile. Recognition. Acknowledgement. She rinsed, dried her hands on sterile towels, came back through the door. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for trusting him with this, for letting him be here, for seeing something in him worth waiting for." She nodded once, took the stethoscope back, looped it around her neck where it belonged, returned to surgery prep. The moment passed. But it had happened. Unspoken, understood, witnessed. The clinic had a small garden behind the building, raised beds built from salvaged lumber, tomatoes and herbs growing in organized rows. Petra watered after evening rounds, clinic closed, staff gone. Tobias found her there without planning to, picked up the second watering can without asking, started on the basil, water making soft sounds against leaves. Copper lay near the fence on the grass, dozing in the cooling air. "What will you do?" she asked, not looking at him. "Long term, I mean." He considered that. "I don't know yet. Maybe veterinary school if I can get accepted. Maybe clinic administration, maybe both. Maybe something else entirely." The water made soft sounds against leaves, against soil. "Takes time to know. I'm learning to be patient." "You'd be good at it. Either one." She moved to the next bed. He looked at her directly. "You think so?" She met his eyes, held his gaze. "I wouldn't say it if I didn't. You know that." Truth without decoration. The way she said everything. Honest, clear, direct. Silence settled between them like evening. Neither moved to leave, to end the moment. The evening light slanted gold through the fence slats, painting everything warm. He set down the watering can. She did the same. They stood 3 feet apart, not close enough to crowd, not far enough to pretend this wasn't happening. "Thank you," he said, "for the chance, for the patience, for seeing something in him worth waiting for." She nodded. "You earned it. You're still earning it." They finished watering as twilight came, as the sky turned purple. 2 weeks later, the garden again, evening settling in cool and quiet. Clinic closed, just them. Petra was checking the irrigation system, small leak she'd been meaning to fix. Tobias held the flashlight while she tightened connections with a wrench. Teamwork now. Easy. Natural. She finished, straightened, brushed dirt from her hands onto her jeans. He set down the flashlight on the raised bed, beam pointing up, stood facing her in the dusk light. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. Quiet. Certain. Final. "Whenever you're ready, however long it takes." He took her hand. Brief, gentle, no pressure. She didn't pull away, didn't lean in either, just held his hand for 3 heartbeats. 4. "I know." Squeezed once, let go. The space between them felt different now. Not a gap, not distance, just space they'd close when the time came. "There's time," she said, looking at him directly. He nodded, meant it. "All the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." They stood like that for another minute, silent, present. Then she picked up her bag from the grass, headed for her car in the lot. He locked up the clinic, checking doors, turning off lights. Separate cars, separate homes. But something had shifted. Acknowledged. The promise was there. Unspoken. Understood. Slow. Right. Honest. 6 months later, Tobias ran clinic administration full-time, handled the books, managed grant applications that kept funding flowing, coordinated volunteer schedules, maintained equipment, tracked inventory. The organizational skills from finance translated perfectly, just applied to different ends now, different purpose. The clinic was stable, growing even, adding capacity. Leo volunteered every Saturday still, learning veterinary medicine from Petra, watching surgeries when appropriate. But Saturday afternoons, he sat with Tobias in the office, asked to learn the budgets, the grant writing, the administration side that made everything else possible. Someone has to keep the clinic running, Leo said, serious. 9 years old, going on 30. Tobias showed him the spreadsheets, taught him what he knew about nonprofit finance. Copper slept under the desk on his blanket, breathing steady, tags clinking softly when he shifted position. Work continued. Life continued. The clinic thrived. And Tobias, for the first time in his adult life, knew exactly who he was supposed to be. Had no doubts, no questions, just certainty.